to go into a bit more detail about the sidechain, I tend to have my kick and my snare sidechained. My kick and my snare routed to bus 6. I can actually show you how I've got my drums routed here. So obviously we've got a kick here. We've then got our 2 snare layers. And a clap. And these are then routed into buses. I actually set up a template for all of my projects to begin a new track, which already has these buses here pre-assigned, so it kind of makes the writing process quite quick and easy to get into without the need of setting up buses. The kick channel has a signal sent to bus 6, and the snare channel has a signal routed to bus 6. And as you can see here, the bus 6 is actually, the output is actually switched off, so it's a ghost bus channel, if you like. So what that enables me to do is sidechain any element in the project to bus 6, which will essentially, if you're using a compressible duck, to the kick and the snare. So here are the kick and the snare channels soloed. And then to add in the sub and the bass. You can hear that the bass is actually ducking to the kick and the snare. If you turn it off, you'll probably notice that the bass seems to have less punch. And then move it on again. What this technique also enables you to do is to create space in the lower frequency regions for the kick and the snare to punch through properly. On top of that, there is rides. And these rides are actually created using Addictive Drummer, which is a really good plugin for creating acoustic drum sounds. Continuing on the drums, we have a ride layer, so they're quite attacky, bitey rides to add into the mix to give it energy. And then obviously the hi-hat, which fills the space between the kick and the snare to give it the groove. On top of that, there are also overheads. So they're really energetic cymbals which give the drums that splashy intensity. And then on top of that, to again give a lot of momentum to the drums, I've added in a break. So that's a really pacey, shuffly break which I pulled out of my library, which complemented the groove for this track. And then of course a crash cymbal. So all together the drums sound like this. As the track progressed, I wanted certain rhythmic elements to drop in and drop out to kind of accentuate what was happening melodically in the track. So in the next set of 8 bars, I introduce some ghost hits, a 909 ride, some shakers, and a bongo. I sometimes find when producing drums that a little bit of reverb on the kick and snare can actually help glue the mix together, and it can also give them quite a big roomy sound, but of course used in moderation. In this track on the kick and snare, you can see I've sent the kick and snare to bus 9, where I've got this reverb here called 2C Aether. And it's a really good reverb because it's very natural sounding, and you have quite a lot of control over the EQ as well. So that just helps give the drums quite a nice roomy sound. Often when adding reverb to sounds, it can make the mix sound quite muddy, so you have to be very careful with how you EQ the reverb. It's useful to think of a track in terms of stereo field and frequency like a tree, so at the lower, starting with the low end frequencies, as you move up, the stereo field gets progressively wider, so you should, as a general rule, have your sub and low frequencies occupying in mono, and then you can get away with some of your upper mids and your treble frequencies in stereo. So often what I do with the reverb is to actually EQ a lot of that bottom end out. So you can do this simply by adding an EQ on that channel and just making a low cut. Another way of another thing to be conscious of when producing is MidSide EQing, which can be very useful for controlling that stereo, that side content. So one of the plugins I use all the time is FabFilter Pro Q, which is a really good EQ, which has a mid-side mode which you can engage to actually give you full control over the mid and side. As you can see here, I've actually added a Pro Q to my reverb channel. This here is the mid control, and this here is the side control, which I've made a cut at 357 Hertz. And obviously you can go a bit more to town on that and duck it out even a bit more. So I find this has been quite an essential process in my most recent mixdowns, just to have that awareness of what's going on in the mono, the mid channel and the side channels. One thing I'm very conscious of throughout the whole mixdown process is mono phase compatibility. I've got this controller here which has a very useful feature, which is a mono button. Simple as it is, I can very quickly test how my mixes sound in mono, and I think as a general rule, if you can achieve a strong mix down in mono, then it should hopefully translate well to stereo. So if you don't have one of these controllers, then it's very simple to just add, if you're using Logic, a gain plugin to your master channel, and using that you can switch between mono and stereo very easily. So I'm constantly flicking back and forth mono to stereo to test how my mixdown translates, and especially if you're making dance music, you want it to sound good on large sound systems, and you know, often these sound systems have varying degrees of how good the stereo actually is, and some sound systems are even in mono, so it's quite important to be aware of that. Another plugin which I use to keep an eye on the stereo field is one by Voxengo. It's actually a free plugin, and it's called MSED, and what this enables you to do is to actually mute the mid channel or affect solo the sides, so you can hear exactly what content is occupying those areas. So for example, in this track, if I'm to mute the mid channel, you can hear all that action going on in the sides. And as a general rule, you know, you shouldn't really be hearing much bass, certainly no bass in the sides and low mids. So what that will then enable you to do is then go back through your mix down and use something like FabFilter Pro Q to maybe EQ out some of those frequencies in the sides. I find working this way gives you a cleaner and more powerful mix.